It is a pleasure for us here in ITBC in Directorate Pendidikan Non-Reguler to have uh, our friend from German, Professor Thorsten. Maybe you can introduce yourself because my lips I couldn't
Oh, yes.
about your major, talking about interest in Indonesia and also the study there in German.
Sure.
Please, Professor
Yes.
Thorsten.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me here. I'm very happy to be here at ITB in Bandung. My name is Thorsten Wiechman. I'm from TU Dortmund. TU is Technical University of Dortmund, which is in the west of Germany. I'm there professor of spatial planning at the largest and oldest planning school in Germany. Is not as old as the planning school in Bandung, but is also 50 years old, is a big one. And I teach planning theory in Dortmund. And what brought me here to Indonesia is actually my interest in planning education internationally. So, actually, in all continents, I want to understand what is similar, what is different, how does planning education in Bandung in Indonesia differ from planning education in Germany, but also from planning education in Cincinnati, in Melbourne, in Sao Paulo, in Cape Town. So it's really to understand the differences because the countries are very different, the laws, the societal system, the challenges are different. But it seems that we share a lot. The similarities are really obvious, but there are some differences, and that's what I study. So I'm actually on a trip around the world.
Wow.
I left Germany 4 months ago. No, it's not true. I traveled for 4 months. I left it a bit more than 2 months ago. So in November, when I first went to Brazil and Sao Paulo, continued to Mexico and Guadalajara, Los Angeles in the United States. And I went to Australia, Melbourne, before coming here and visiting the planning school of ITB, the oldest of all these planning schools with the longest tradition. I'm very happy to be here to learn about this. And the final stop will be next month then in Cape Town, South Africa, before I go back to Germany in March.
Interesting. Can you talk more about the progress of the planning education research? The progress, I mean, or you can analyze your analysis or finding about the planning education here compared to German or America or there in Europe.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Of course, that is my interest here, and it's a very interesting topic because planning as an academic discipline is still relatively new. I wouldn't say it's in its infancy, but the school here in Bandung was founded in 1959, and I don't know any older school anywhere worldwide that is still continuously operating, still teaching planning. There had been schools founded before, but they don't exist anymore. And those who do exist are younger, as far as I know. There might be another one, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the tradition here is really outstanding. Dortmund, being founded in 1968, is already one of the old and established places of the discipline. But in comparison with other disciplines like physics or philosophy, it's of course a very young discipline, right? So we build a lot on other academic disciplines that we use to found the basis of planning, like engineering, architecture, environmental science, social science, political science, law, all these fields that we have to integrate in planning. And over the course of time, of these 50, 60 years of the development, we've seen quite an interesting transformation of planning education, but planning as well as a policy field and practice. So in the beginning, it was very much related to architecture, to physical design of cities, to infrastructure aspects. And I think worldwide, there was like in the late 20th century, 80s, 90s, a shift towards more participatory approaches, policy-oriented approaches. There was no more need to reach consensus, to collect opinions by people. And that has also changed the way planning education has been organized. So it's also more about, governance aspects, legal aspects, participatory aspects, about empowerment of people, and is reflected in the planning theory, is reflected in planning practice, and also in planning education. So different fields have entered, different disciplines have entered the field, different professors with different background have been hired for the schools. And all in all, I would say, just if you take the big picture, what surprised me most is the similarities are so striking. So if I talk to colleagues here in Bandung about the planning education, it's very easy to talk because we, in a way, speak the same language. And I don't talk about English, I talk about the planning language. We do understand each other easily. We build often on the same scholarly work. The modules we teach, the methods, the instruments are very similar, even though the challenges are so different. The countries are different. The legal, the constitutional framework is different. But it seems that the core of the planning discipline is something that we really share. And I observed the same in Sao Paulo and Guadalajara or in Melbourne, that in the end, it is that there has been over these 40, 50, 60 years, community developed with about, there is an estimate of 13,000 lecturers, professors, teachers in urban planning worldwide. And it is now, I think, an established scientific field, academic community that shares a lot. And so that is, to me, more surprising to see all the similarities than the differences. And here in ITB in Bandung, I do see the same. A lot of the professors here are originally trained in Bandung, so they have a close connection to this university. That's more than I see in other universities. But then basically everyone left to study in Europe, in the United States, in Asia, collect some international experience, and then came back here. So I think a lot what is taught here, the idea of planning, the way research is done on planning, has been influenced by these international debates. And so it's really easy to talk to each other and to understand, because in the end, the similarities are more obvious than the differences.
Yeah, at the beginning, our study program used the name or the term planology. And when it has to be translated in English, it becomes a great debate. Because what we have to do first, the urban or the regional? Based on your research, do you have any suggestion about that? Because for a long time, when the planology is very popular, and then it is translated into regional and city planning. But if it is compared with other planning education board, it's common to use urban and regional planning. So right now, maybe if it is translated right now, it's more common using urban and regional planning. But in the old time, maybe our professor at that time using the term planology, and then to have a basic understanding about pay attention to the regional and then the city or the urban context. But what do you think about the based on your research progress?
It's an interesting question. It also comes to, of course, languages, because though English is now the lingua franca, the way we communicate to each other, of course, we have our own languages, and the meaning of words are sometimes a bit different. And actually, the planning programs in the world have very different names. There is no standard. So what you have said is right. Like in the United States, for instance, the typical name of the planning program would be city and regional planning. And yes, often it's first the local level, the city level, the urban level mentioned, and then the regional one. And that has to do with the administrative, the government system in the United States, but also in the UK, where the regional tier of government is very weak, is not really established, whereas the local tier is very strong. So, of course, they put the emphasis on the local level because that's where they have more planning than on the regional level. That has to be understood if you consider the English name of it. In German, for instance, our school and our program is called, in German, Raumplanung, which literally translates to space planning. We call it then spatial planning, and that is now a term that is very much used in our field. Is actually some terminology that is not from England or the United States. It's what we call Euro English. So in the European Union, there was also a struggle. How do we call it? And then spatial planning was established or adapted in the, I think, 1980s, 90s as the term that was new to the English. They didn't use it, but now it's used. And actually, I'm quite happy with this term because it doesn't, you're free to emphasize different levels of space. And the problem with city planning, often, sometimes it's just urban planning, the program called, is of course that then people say, what about rural areas? It's not all urban. And there is even in English, in English you can say country planning, but in German you wouldn't have an equivalent. So Stadtplanung, which means urban planning in German, would be applied everywhere, no matter it's urban or rural. So it's again a term that is not that easy to use. And if I go to other languages, like in just a random example, in Poland, in Polish, all planning programs are called, translated into English, territorial management. Territorial management. That partly has to do with the socialist history of Eastern Europe, because spatial planning there was often called territorial planning. And now, after being liberalized from socialism, they didn't want to have planning in their wording. So now it's territorial management. In Latin America, these planning programs, like when I was in Guadalajara, the planning program is called urbanismo, urbanism. That is planning there. And so there are different terms, I think, reflecting the different history and the different challenges in this country. So I observed that here in Bandung, originally it was translated to regional and urban planning, and now it's again urban and regional planning, so more to the international standard. But I think it makes a lot of sense in a country like Indonesia to emphasize the regional level, because this is a country with so many, 17,000 islands and so many peripheral territories, so many areas that would not be considered urban. And if that is the level that is the focus on, I think regional urban planning would be fair to say, or to call it this way. But in the end, I think both terms work. And spatial planning, I think, is also a good one, a short one, though in many ways people do not know what it is. If you use urban regional planning, most people at least have an idea.
Yeah.
If I use spatial planning, or the German translation, people think about space industry or kind of architecture. So spatial is not a term that everybody immediately understands. Not even my rectorate or someone else. We always need to explain what we do.
But if planning as a study program, a regular study program, or a study program that has to compete with other study program, then the name or the term must be very significant, or determine someone from the high school to choose architect or planning, because architect is easy to understand, because planning is important, especially for the future, but it's hard to understand. It's so abstract.
Yes, you're very right. And I think, in particular in Europe, it may have been a bit different in the past, because we have never had problems to have enough students. But as the whole of Europe is undergoing a demographic change with low fertility, less young people every year, there will be a stronger competition for students in future. And we have talked about that, and exact the point that you mentioned. In order to be able to compete with other disciplines, we need to label it in a way that is known, that is established. And there it is a problem when different universities call the same differently. And that's the case in Germany. So it's not everywhere spatial planning. We have some planning programs called just urban planning. One is called urbanistic, like urbanismo. So you have within our country a lot of different names for the same discipline. And that doesn't help, absolutely. Is not helpful. In this regard, probably urban regional planning is a better terminology, because that is probably the most established way to call it, that or spatial planning. But yeah, I agree. And I think for the discipline, it's time to think more in these marketing terms, because I observe that in many countries, the planning practice, the policy field is really under pressure. Because the heydays of planning was probably in the global north in 60s, 70s, when there was a strong belief in expert knowledge. It was a time when man landed on moon and everything seemed possible, and everything was like, you can control everything if you have enough experts to tell you what to do. And that was challenged then by social movements, by also a structural crisis that the countries saw after the 1970s, 80s. There was more this consensus-based approach. But in many countries, planning is really under pressure from different sides. And in order to also convince people outside of academia that urban planning, regional planning is necessary, is to the good of the people, it will improve the quality of life of people, I think it's important to have easy to understand terminology, clear idea, a message, and to be more visible publicly. That is still something. If I talk to politicians in Germany, I often realize that they don't really know what planning is. I mean, even a Lord Mayor of a city does not really know much about urban planning. And that is something, because of course we're still relatively new, and maybe planning is not always super attractive for politicians. If you restrict development, if you protect the environment, maybe it's not what you do first when you want to be reelected. But so I think terminology in this regard is important, and I think we need to work on it.
But do you think that because of very limited person who understand about planning, it is also important to give a knowledge about planning, not only in degrees, but also in a kind of, do you think giving a training related with the planning is important? While other dealing with big data and also has a certificate, we have to give the basic of sustainability by training.
Yes, I agree. We should do much more in this regard in training. For instance, local politicians or people that work in some intermediate institutions, to increase the knowledge, the understanding, why it's useful, because it takes time to explain that. And we have, if we address very new problems in the field of planning, let's take climate change adaptation as one of these major issues. Of course, most people are now aware that we got a problem, we need to do something, but I don't think that many people know what planning can do about it. And that planning is one of the key fields to address the challenges of climate change adaptation. And we have, for instance, done a large study in one of the regions, metropolitan regions in Germany. to come up with a land use concept addressing these issues, to project future, or to include in the strategy projected future of flash floods, extreme weather events, heat islands, and what to do, what to change in the land use and everything. And what we realized was that it was relatively easy to convince city planners in the different municipalities in the region. But those who ultimately decided on the plans were the council members, the politicians, and also sometimes very influential, the chambers of commerce and industry, or some environmental associations. So a lot of stakeholders, and it was very difficult for us to reach out to them. Because in the region, there were so many people that ultimately did it. And when we tried to reach it out, for instance, we called it a regional forum. So we invited 800 people from municipal councils for a meeting, and several others, just 2 forums publicly. And we said, okay, we talk about land use in your region. If you want to know more, come and join us. It was like in the evening, like from, 4 hours. And we were surprised in the end that there were 120 politicians coming.
Oh.
They wanted to know more. And they were across all parties. And we got a very positive feedback at the end of this, because they said, oh, that was super interesting, and now we know much better what we talk about, and that was super helpful. You should do it more often. Still, there were 700 others that didn't join, that still vote on it, And these are the people we need to address. These are the people we need to convince that we have tools and planning that will help us to do not only climate change adaptation, it's just an example, and addressing them, and strengthening the field by further training or more public relations, also working more with journalists. I think that's also something we should improve, would help a lot.
What about because of right now we deal with technology, for instance, social media.
Yeah.
Do you think it is which one first? If you have any suggestion for Indonesia, the old generation, the politician and the government, or the young generation using social media to socialize about the importance of planning, urban planning, regional planning, something like to make what is your final project related with the sentiment analysis? Is also graduated from planning during the COVID.
Well, COVID has changed a lot with the way we communicate, online communication, video conferencing, and all this is now standard. But I think your question is very important, and I would even say it's not just social media; it's artificial intelligence in general that will change dramatically the way we do politics, and in the end, planning is part of it. It will change dramatically the way we communicate as a society. And I think we're just at the beginning to understand what that means for planning procedures, for local policies, regional policies. I have headed a working group in Germany in an academy on spatial development that was developing scenarios for the future of planning with a time horizon of 2050. So 30 years ahead, we were asking ourselves, not what will the future look like, because we don't know, but what could be a realistic future. And we came up with 4 very different scenarios, but all of them included, of course, a dramatic development in artificial intelligence, in these tools like real-time translation apps that would for instance, make it for us much easier to do participation processes in migrant communities that we can't reach now, because we have neighborhoods in Germany where people don't speak German. Turkish, like in Berlin, there are more than 100,000 Turkish people. And doing city planning there is often the challenge that hardly any city planner speaks Turkish, but the people don't speak German. So how do you do a participation process? If you have a real-time translation app, things may get easier. It's just a very simple example, but also, of course, the tools to analyze like flows in the space, like transportation flows and in real time, of course, will be much more powerful in future. So we will know much more. The task actually in future will be less to collect data, but to select data. So we will have tons of data and making sense out of it. That is the challenge, not to get data. There will be endless data. But also, of course, the influence of bots, of algorithms, of people that deliberately want to disturb communication is a challenge. So if we had for regional plan in Germany, maybe 20 years ago, about, let's say, maybe in a urban region, like 1,000 statements to a plan draft that the planners had to deal with. Now with social media, now with online participation, it can easily reach 100,000. And the law still says a planner has to address every single statement, saying not taking it as granted, but has to say if doesn't follow this advice, then why we do not take this into consideration and so on. And if you have 100,000 statements, it would basically kill any work or delay it massively. And so the digital revolution will change a lot. And we have not yet fully understand what that means for planning. It will also include a lot of chances. So, for instance, one of the conflicts in planning in Germany right now is the establishment of wind turbines all over the country as part of the energy transition. And there is a lot of fear about people having these wind turbines in their near neighborhood, that it will destroy the visual impression of the landscape and so on. And now with some programs, we can really well visualize the outcome when these wind turbines will be erected, and that even people can kind of virtually go into their own house and see how the wind turbine that is not yet built will look like. A 3D model in which you can move. And we hope to be able
digital twin, kind of.
Digital twin, exactly. And we hope to increase acceptance for that by using such tools. So there are a lot of chances in this, but also a lot of threats because that can be misused. And we already see impact by also other nations in our electoral campaigns, but also in some planning campaigns, that people deliberately try to influence these procedures. And with digital techniques, of course, that threat is increasing as well.
I have been to Germany in 2004, and what makes me amazed is that the bus will come in 10, 9, 8. We couldn't do it like that in Indonesia until now. So do you have any suggestion about that? It reflects about the real-time service, real-time urban service, but it already done before the AI comes at the time.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, it's of course, this way it works in Germany and some other countries. I mean, for instance, Japan is much better in doing that than Germany, because in Japan, if the system says the bus is coming in 3 minutes, it will be there in 3 minutes, not in 3 minutes, 10 seconds, but in 3 minutes. And the bus door will open exact at the spot where it's indicated. In Germany, I think we're not as good, but yeah, the system works well. In countries like Indonesia, all of the transportation is differently organized. So it's a very different situation. I think there's a lot of, let's say, space for improvement, no doubt. But it's not just in Indonesia. One of the examples on my trip here around the world that was most, surprising, even shocking to me, was when I was in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo, 25 million people, mega city, very close to Rio de Janeiro. 150, 180 kilometers. Another megacity, 70 million. There is no train connection. You have two megacities next to each other where a bullet train could easily go in I don't know, less than an hour. But no train connection. Actually, there is no other connection that has more flights daily. So you have 90 airline flights each day between the two cities, but it's not really effective because you need a lot of time to go to the airport, from the airport, and of course, in terms of climate change, taking an airplane to go to a city that is 100 kilometers away, it doesn't make much sense. Or you take a car, which takes hours because the roads are full. So, and I asked myself why there is no train connection. It's so obvious that would be beneficial to people. It's even obvious that it would work economically. So it would be a profitable connection, no doubt. There would be no need for subsidies, but it's not there. Why? I can't give you the answer, but I think there's a lot of space for improvements. And having this more sophisticated tool that will tell you the bus comes in 3 minutes, that is maybe then the last step of it. But in some areas, I mean, you have a new bullet train here from Jakarta to Bandung, so you're ahead of Sao Paulo in this regard.
TGV.
But yeah, transportation is a major issue, but it's also in Germany. So particularly the region I come from, the Ruhr, which is the largest urban region in Germany, it's by no way satisfying the way that transportation is organized. It's still very much car dependent and also vulnerable. Yeah, there is much space for improvement too.
Based on your research, maybe you have any comments about we have a policy transformation right now because there is a new law related with the what we call it Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja or Omnibus Law, because later on, using the presidential peraturan pemerintah or government regulation, there is a new regulation related with the planning process and procedure right now.
Okay.
And then the new guidance related with the how to make regional planning, detailed spatial planning, and also technical planning, something like that. And also it has to deal with the investment that has to be cope with the planning concern. Other things that with the how to give opportunity for people to participate in development. So getting confused maybe for kind of law in Indonesia with the because in Indonesia using the regional autonomy law, there is a several layer, national level and then provincial and also kabupaten and kota or regencies or cities level.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments about that for the future?
Well, so of course I'm not that familiar with the Indonesian situation, but what I do is a research on the time dimension of planning. And Germany is a federal state, so we have different layers as well, multi-governance system, and everything has to be coordinated with other levels. So we know that very well. And I'm particularly interested in time, in the time dimension, in timing, temporality of planning. And one of the debates that we have, but for I would say now 30 years, is that people complain that planning is too slow, that it has to speed up, that it's plan is outdated before is official, and many people think that in order to speed up planning, we need to do less planning. That would reduce bureaucracy, reduce standards, and then everything will be faster.
But it's not a kind of anti-planning. It's not anti, but
well,
to make it more.
Partly it is. Of course, people that anyway don't like planning use that argument in order to get rid of planning. But also convinced planners still think we need to get faster. And the general idea is doing less will make it faster. Actually, I'm convinced of the opposite. And I will have a presentation this April on a national conference in Germany, actually with a lot of public actors as well. And the title of my presentation is "Speeding Up Needs Time," and it tried to address the challenge. If you want, like a big infrastructure project, if you want to do it in a shorter time, What you would need is more planning, not less planning. More planners, not less planners. But you need to invest that time in a shorter period. So instead of having 1 or 2 planners dealing with a new highway, take 20 and you can do it in a much shorter time. So not reducing planning is the answer, but making it more efficient. That is my main point. And if you want to speed up, make sure that you take everything into consideration. That is really crucial, because if you plan quick and dirty and then you try to implement and it doesn't work because things have not been considered, and some you get static problems or a protest by citizens, so that doesn't make things faster. So if you want to speed it up, plan better. Shorter, yes, but it needs more time at the same time. So more people, more workload, and at the same time. That would be my answer. So if politics really want to make these things faster, employ more planners, make it more efficient, do more planning in a shorter time, then you have a chance. If you just reduce bureaucracy, what you end up will not work. That's my point.
So the important keywords there is, correct me if I'm wrong, efficiency for good governance, and then do it for a kind of package, doing it in a package way, and it's also related to the planning expert in one time. It has to employ or to deploy so many planners in the same time. For instance, we have in Indonesia medium time for 1 year, shorter time for medium time for 5 years, short time for 1 year program, or longer time is for 20 years. So it has to be, for instance, if the political years is every 5 years, it has to be in 1 or 5 years. The planning or the planner has to deal with and then coordinate with the politicians, something like that.
We have that too. So these legislative periods that kind of determine things, and even like, I don't know, like 1 year before a voting, you can't do anything because nothing can anymore be decided. It's campaign time, and we have to wait for that is the case in Germany too. I think if you want to do, and yes, efficiency is an important thing. If you want to do it efficient, one of the organizational aspects that is crucial is to organize it in an efficient way. That is often a managerial
in an efficient
unit.
way.
To have it not, if you want to have a big project being implemented, become reality, it's unlikely that it works if many tiers of government in many different places have to coordinate each other. But instead, if you have a managerial unit that will take care of everything in a relatively short time, but where you put the experts and the people that you need all together, and they work like in a management process on this project, with a given schedule, given timeline, enough resources, enough expertise, then it's more likely to work. And one other thing that I will always recommend is expect the unexpected. So if you, like in terms of finance, that would probably mean if you have an estimated budget, when you say, okay, this project will probably cost us, I don't know, $10 million, add 20% for unexpected costs. Expect the unexpected. It will never go the way that you expected. And that is true for any other thing. So always expect being prepared for things that are not expected, so that if something happens that you have not taken into account in the beginning, not everything is delayed or stopped or is crashing. But I think there are a lot of ways to do this, and there is, like, the Danish scholar Bent Flifbjerg has worked a lot on it, and I think there are a lot of very good ideas on how to organize it. I think there are far too few examples where these good ideas have really been implemented. So it's the standard way we do it, and this is true for Germany, and I think for most countries in the world, is not clever, is not smart. We could do much better.
If one of the expert in engineer said that that's where the role of technology has to be considered. Then everything has to do it in a smart way, using technology, something like that. So it has to use high-tech software or hardware to make sure that the plan will be better implemented. Do you think the role of technology is that important, or on the other side, the important one is the expert or the perspective or the what we call it visionary of planner?
Yeah, yeah. Well, both. So when I use the term smart, I mean it in a broader sense. It's not just about smart technologies, but smart in any
Agree
way.
with that.
And of course, one of the key things also in these projects is leadership. You need to have people that are able to do the job. That's one of the key things. If the person that is responsible is not capable of doing the job, the best technology will not lead you anywhere, you know. But technology is helpful. It can make it faster, more efficient, more resilient if it is used in a proper way. But it's just a tool. It needs the humans that use it in this way. Smart to me is more than just technology.
So, do you have any idea about the situation nowadays in Indonesia? And you have more knowledge about the planning outside there in the developed countries. Which one first we have to do for urban, regional, and then the new capital, the IKN? We have also IKN. Which one first to deal with the expertise or the skill of the government or the layperson, or the important is to develop planning guidance, or I don't know. I need your suggestion or your comment.
Yeah, as I'm not that much an expert of Indonesia, of course, I hesitate a bit to give too many advice. I think what is important to understand that whenever you focus on one level, there is a danger that you kind of underestimate other levels. So I would always say there is action needed on all levels. So in the German system, the national level in planning is even not that important. It's more the federal states and the regional and the local level. But still, I would consider all levels, even the European Union as a super local agency, I would consider all levels as equally important. It will only work when we address this on the different levels. And then it comes to the issue at hand. So again, if we take just climate change now as an example, there are issues that you can very well address on the local level. Like if we talk about, I don't know, heat islands to provide some shade, introduce some green in the city, and something that can be very well done on the local level. If it comes to water, watersheds are at least on the regional level. A municipality alone cannot do nothing about it. It's too small. And it should be at least the regional or provincial level. And if it comes to the big issues of climate protection and sea level rise, and so it is not even the national level enough. You need to have an international level. And that this idea of addressing the issues on the adequate level is actually in our context in Europe called subsidiarity. So the idea is to address every issue on the lowest level possible that is still adequate to address it. And I'm convinced that's a good idea. So if communities can deal with something, they should, because they are close to the people, they're close to the problem, they can really do something on their own and improve their quality of life. But for many issues, the local level is not enough. And so you need to go on the adequate level. And that, of course, then brings up the problem of multi-level governance. So how to coordinate these different tiers of governance when on every level you have action. And that is part, again, the task of planning, strategic planning, how to coordinate that.
Related with the dynamic conditions and then the problems of planning in Indonesia, especially in urban areas here in Java Island and outside Java Island, 7 big islands. What kind of opportunity that you think that we can collaborate or develop a kind of non-degree program with your university, so to make it more important for to make governance or people in Indonesia give more attention or more knowledge about planning.
So I think there is, not just in Indonesia but worldwide, great demand to learn more and get ideas on how to deal with the new challenges. So what I mean with new challenges are the digital transformation, artificial intelligence. What will come? What do we have to expect? How can we use it? How can we protect ourselves? All related to that. And I know, for instance, that the American Planning Association offers a lot of courses for practitioners in America, because that's what they do. And all these courses are far overrun. So far more people want to do these courses than they could offer. So there's a high demand. I would be sure the same in Germany, and my guess would be same in Indonesia and other countries. The same applies to the issue of climate change, how to deal with it. So we take these new challenges, these challenges where people realize there is a strong change, we need to react, we need to do something, but we are not used to deal with this. We need to have more knowledge, more ideas, more techniques. That's probably what I would consider the most promising fields of further education. And that can, of course, then be broken down in certain fields. So digital transformation in, I don't know, transportation planning or climate change adaptation and water management or so. Then of course, because these issues I address, of course, are giant. Just giant. But if you take then smaller parts of the planning field, and if you address these new or these mega trends that will change a lot for planning and policy, then I think there is certainly a demand for that.
Yeah, maybe we come to what we call it the end of this conversation, I think. But maybe I can highlight some keywords that rise from this conversation, like the term of planning itself, the scope of the planning, and then I don't know about the process and how to make it more efficient in Indonesia, and then do it in shorter time but integrated. And another thing is related with the importance of doing a kind of make it more people know about planning knowledge.
Absolutely.
Other things about that giant issue, what we call it, global issues.
And I think, actually, if I may say that, there is a huge potential in mutual learning. So that's why I'm very happy to be here, because what in the end I realize in all these schools is that we often face the same challenges. We work on similar things. And if we would exchange more, I think we would all benefit a lot. And that would start with student exchange, for instance. I talked to some of the professors here. And I mean, one of the good things about Germany is that we don't charge student fees.
Really?
So for someone coming to Germany, the fee is not an issue. Of course, you have to cover your living costs, but beside that, we're very open. We're an international school. We have exchange within Europe, supported by the Erasmus program of the European Union. But we have also some exchange agreements, memorandums with universities abroad. And our students are very happy to go abroad and to spend a semester or two somewhere else. And we're also happy to take students in, and for exchange students, we're even flexible because The undergraduate education is mostly in German, some courses in English, but we have 2 master programs that are offered in English, and exchange students can kind of select whatever they consider useful for them, so that there is enough English language courses. And so student exchange is one thing, staff exchange, so researchers, early stage researchers, maybe PhD students also could benefit a lot. And even professors spending some time abroad could be a good thing. And so I think this exchange is something that we should organize in future.
Yeah, maybe we can promote the collaboration because until now we have kind of under the name of summer school or during the COVID, we call it international virtual course that make it possible for Indonesian and student from abroad to work together for around 2 weeks or 2 months or so in Indonesia. Then the professor come and then we have a joint research going to the field, and then everybody's get evaluated, and then the certificate is also coordinated by this office. The summer
is
school.
this global school in July? Because that was something I was learning, that there is some.
Which
some
one is
course.
that?
I think it was with Melbourne and others that in July that is offered.
If it is related with the what we call world-class university concern.
Okay.
So it has to be at the admission is here.
Okay.
So if there is a evaluation for anything, so it's available online that there is that activities during the year, every years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we should certainly explore the opportunities, because I'm sure students in Dortmund would love to come here, and maybe the other way around. So let's look into that.
Yes. Well, one more thing. Do you have any more explain about your research? You said that about water or
Yes.
river.
Yes.
Maybe later on, someone interested to take part in or to make cooperation or to collaborate.
Okay. Yes. I can briefly explain this research project that is a bit independent of the comparison of planning schools in the world.
Yeah.
I used this trip also to work on that second project. Is actually about urban river regeneration. Is about the water in the city, running water, so rivers, canals, creeks, and is about the interrelationship between these rivers, waters, and the nearby neighborhoods, the communities.
Oh.
So in urban rivers, mostly in industrial regions, polluted rivers, heavily modified rivers, so the worst rivers, let's put it this way. And I want to understand worldwide how the cleanup is done, how the cleanup and the restoration of these rivers can contribute to the quality of life in the nearby communities, in the neighborhoods, how can improve the situation by cleaning up the river, by improving the blue and green infrastructure, and vice versa, how the regeneration of urban neighborhoods, the improvement of neighborhoods, can also contribute to the cleanup of the rivers and the improvement of the river and the water quality. So it's about this linkage. And we have done a database worldwide with now more than 500 urban rivers that have seen first some pollution and now some cleanup. And we do some more in-depth studies in likely around 20 cases where we want to kind of tell the story there in all places. Old industrial rivers, of course, often refer to Europe and the United States because or North America, because we look for places that early industrialized with the first wave of industrialization, so coal mining, steel milling, textile industries, shipping, these things. But on my trip, I already saw that there were super interesting examples of urban rivers and urban river regeneration also in the global south. I had fantastic talks and field visits in Sao Paulo, for instance, in Guadalajara. And also here in Bandung, like the Citerum is a very interesting example, often called the most toxic river in the world. Has seen some improvement. I think it's still lagging behind if you compare the situation in Europe and the United States, where the real serious efforts to clean up rivers started in the 1980s and 1990s. It's now 30, 40 years of cleanup efforts, and you see the progress. But if you look at the history, of course, it's not that long ago. So in my childhood, rivers in the Ruhr looked probably very similar to the Citerum today. People, children playing drowned there or even were intoxicated. Same in Liverpool and other cities where you hear these stories that a young boy died after just drinking a bit water from the Mersey. And again, that's a field I think where comparison is quite interesting. How different cities, different communities address that best practice, how you can do it, because you need the people to do it. Because if you clean it up and people next day throw again trash into the river, there is nothing you really have achieved. And so that is one research project I do, and that could be also something I would like to further investigate here in Indonesia about these urban waters.
Very interesting. Very interesting about water, especially a river, creek, something like that in Indonesia, because so many problems, so many unique conditions here, especially related with the land, the land tenure or something like that, and then the spatial planning, also the revitalization.
And one thing that I have observed, and I don't know if it's the same in Indonesia, but in most countries, you do have scholars that really work on rivers, but that are often biologists, hydrologists, really, the river guys that really look for a certain species, measure water quality, the chemical situation, everything. That's all fine, it's great. And then you have the urban regeneration people that may consider waters as well, but more as an amenity. Does it look nice? Okay, perfect. But the real link between river restoration and urban regeneration is hardly ever taken into account. And I attended last September a European river restoration conference, and I was a bit confused after a while, and at first didn't understand what confused me. And then I realized there were a lot of pictures shown from rivers that have been cleaned up, but in none of the pictures there was ever a human being. It was all looked supernatural. Nice, green, yes, they had fishes and everything, but human action, human activity was there always considered a disturbance, a threatening factor. But it was not, and they deliberately did not really go into urban rivers because they consider that too difficult. Like you cannot really achieve a natural state. I agree, you can't. But this link of urban regeneration, the urban perspective, and the river restoration and the water perspective is hardly ever taken into consideration. And I think that is really worth to be looked at, how you can kind of use the link between the city and the water to improve quality of life, but also to improve the state of nature. I really, as you can see, I get passionate about it. I think it's very interesting, and there's a lot to be done.
And maybe in Bandung for this final session, Bandung cannot be separated from the what we call it Cikapundung River, because there is a book called Bandung Tempo Dulu, the Old Bandung.
Okay.
The Old Bandung. It was written by our senior planner, also from ITB, talking about everything about Bandung, the uniqueness, and then how this city from 200,000 people, inhabitant, become 3 million, something like that right now, because also it is influenced by the availability of Cikapundung River
Yeah.
as the face of the city at that time.
absolutely.
I think not at that time, until now. I think. Thank you. Well, thank you, Professor Thorsten.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for this opportunity. Then we are going to have sate.
Yes. The fun part.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Maybe
you.
we can continue this podcast some other time. Maybe in the kind
to
of
do so.
training, something like that in Dortmund or.
Lot of online possibilities. Or I
Thank
come back.
you so much. Thank
you.
you so much.
Thank you.